Check, check, 1, 2, 3. My name is John Bunn and I shoot Sony. 6 months ago, I shot my very first wedding completely on Sony, and I wanted to do a review to let you know my honest thoughts of switching from Canon to Sony after 6 months of shooting weddings. I've been able to travel to Guatemala, to Telluride, Colorado, to Lake Placid, New York, to Denver, Colorado, lots of places, and was able to use my new Sony FX3 and Sony A7S III. I've made the complete switch. I'm all the way over to Sony now, outside of a couple pieces of glass, a couple of lenses, but I am in love with what I'm getting. I'm in love with everything about it. And I want to talk to you about a few things that are really standing out to me as to why I think this camera system is the best for me. But before I get into the review, I have to say, first of all, I do not recommend just switching camera systems and then going to shoot a wedding without any practice. I practiced a lot. I did some styled shoots. I got hands-on experience with it. I got the menu system down. I asked lots of questions from other people that were using Sony. I tested it. I brought the footage back to my computer. I tested it again, brought the footage back to my computer before actually shooting a wedding. You do not want to just go straight to shooting a wedding the first time with your new camera. So I don't want you to do that. Do not say John from How to Film Weddings taught you to do that, because that is false. So I also did something when I did shoot my first full wedding, is I brought Blake, the editor, with me. Blake is a good friend, amazing at shooting, and he had been shooting on Sony for a little while before me, and he really knew the menu systems. He really knew how to get the most out of the cameras, so it gave me confidence that if I screwed something up, that he was there to help me fix it. Also, I brought a couple of my C100s with me on the first couple of weddings, just in case something went wrong, I didn't know what I was doing. I had them as backup. Turns out I never needed those cameras and ended up just leaving them at home, putting a couple of them up for sale, and I officially moved to Sony, and I am loving it. So I wanted to give you a review of what it is that I'm loving about these new cameras over the Canons and how it works really well for me. First things first, I have to say the size in general is my favorite thing about these cameras, and how big of a punch these cameras pack in such a small body. I used to have to carry 3 Pelican cases for travel, and now I can fit everything in one backpack. Everything in one backpack. It's blowing my mind. It's made it so much easier for me to travel abroad, to travel across the states, and it just makes my life so much easier on a wedding day having everything I need all in one spot. Now, the next thing that was really important to me was being able to get 10-bit color. For those of you that don't understand the difference between like an 8-bit color and a 10-bit color, it's like thousands of colors versus millions of colors. It's a lot more depth for you to use when color grading your footage, and I always felt like I was missing something with my color grade, and I couldn't get my footage to where I wanted it to be, and so getting that 10-bit footage was really important to me. I was shooting on the C100 Mark IIs for a really long time, and they only had 8-bit color, and I didn't really think that it was that big of a difference until I shot 10-bit, and oh my goodness, such a big difference. And again, in this small camera body, way better colors. It was just amazing. And then on top of that, being able to shoot 4K 60 at that 10-bit allowed me to get really high quality footage, really high frame rates, so I could offer slow motion footage in my films in a way that I hadn't before. I could slow things down if I needed to, but that 10-bit 4K 60, oh my goodness, I'm telling you, it's so stinking good. I love it. I love the color that I'm getting out of it. I'm loving the way I can manipulate colors and get the colors exactly where I want. And I've seen my brand be elevated because of what I can do with this camera. Also, I know it's not such a big issue anymore, but whenever I was purchasing these cameras, overheating was a really big deal with the R5 and the R6. I know a lot of that's been remedied, but I wanted something that wasn't going to overheat, and this is something that I love about the Sony FX3s that I have. They have a fan built in, and they are just workhorses. I was filming a wedding that lasted about 30 minutes in July in 108-degree temperatures outside and no overheating. And that's something I need in my camera to be able to know when I'm shooting in different destinations or I'm shooting here at home in Oklahoma, that it's not going to give out on me when I'm shooting at these high frame rates and high bit rates. So overheating was a huge deal for me. And I can say after 6 months of shooting, it still hasn't overheated. There are a ton of other things that I love about this camera system, but those are my main big things that I love. I love that I can just get in and out of places. The last thing I wanted to say is the internal stabilization to be able to go handheld has changed my life. It's changed how I can do things at a wedding. I can get into tight little spaces. I don't have to be on a monopod all day long. I will say I don't do this as much as I want to yet. I'm still building confidence and making sure that it looks like I want. But every time I've ended up going handheld, it's such a small footprint, it's so light, and I can get incredible footage that's not shaky. That built-in internal stabilization is butter. So overall, I think I'd give it like a 9.5 out of 10. There's not too much that I would say that I don't like about it, but I did want to tell you the things that I'm seeing that I wish that I had. I think the biggest thing for me that I'm missing when it comes to this versus my Canons or my C100s or C70s is the built-in ND filters. I love built-in ND filters. I've actually not purchased any ND filters yet. If you have any that you know that I should get for these Sonys, please put them in the comments below. But for me, I just crank the shutter right now and I just feel like I can't get the silhouette kind of shots that I like anymore. And just being able to push a button and boom, I've got the ND filter on. The ease of that with wedding filmmaking, it's a huge bummer for me when it comes to these weddings. I've worked around it, but that's the biggest bummer for me. The next thing that has become difficult, it's not terrible, but battery life. I had to purchase 10 batteries. They last an hour and a half or two shooting in 4K, at the 60 frames or 24 frames. It's about 2 hours maybe or so for each battery. And then I have 3 cameras, so I had to buy a lot of batteries and I'm always having to keep a couple extra on me and worry about that. Whereas when I was with the C70s, my battery would last for 8 hours. So battery life is a big one for me as well that I'm missing. It's not the end of the world, but it's just one extra thing I have to think about. And the last thing, which it might be the biggest thing that I miss, is I miss making fun of Sony shooters, because Sony shooters, we all know, are a little cocky, a little arrogant. And I think I'm becoming one of those, which is kind of scary for me. Maybe need some help, maybe send some help. But that's one of the biggest things I'm gonna miss. It's just making fun of all you Sony shooters. But I can't anymore because this is such a good camera system. So those are the main things that I'm missing: that battery life, those ND filters, and making fun of you Sony people. But overall, I can't tell you how excited I am to continue to shoot. I get home from a wedding and I'm so excited to get the footage into my computer so then I can add my color grade to it and just see this most beautiful footage. Everything about what I'm doing is now elevated because of these cameras. And I'll say this to you in closing for this video today. Don't just purchase a camera because I say to do it, or Nick says to do it, or Matt Johnson, heaven forbid, Matt Johnson says to do it. That beard is just lovely. Anyway, I'm back. Okay, so don't just buy a camera because of that. That is not why you want to do it. I looked at my schedule for 2022 and I said, I'm going to be traveling most of my weddings. I'm going to want to get higher bit rate. I want better color. I want better 4K 60 footage. This fit for me. It was a big, big expense. I spent over $15,000 switching. And it's been a long learning curve. I've had to learn how to shoot in S-Log. I've had to learn how to overexpose by 1.7 to 2.0 stops and not go over 640 on my ISO, or not go under 640 on my ISO, or not go over 20. There's a lot to learn and there's a lot of learning curve. But now that I've made it through that and I know the difference between Canon and Sony, if I were voting, I would say Sony is the much, much better camera for me. So don't just go out and buy a Sony because I say so. Rent some cameras, try some new things out. If you're already Team Sony or Canon or Fuji or Nikon or whatever you are, be intentional about your camera choice. Don't just get a camera because somebody else says it's good. See what works really well for you and for your style. Speaking of being intentional, I'm going to intentionally ask you that if you're not part of our Facebook community, head over to howtofilmweddings.com/community to join. Facebook sucks, but our Facebook group is incredible. 13,000 plus wedding filmmakers helping each other grow and learn. It's a great place to be. So be sure to check out howtofilmweddings.com/community. That's the end for me today. If you're still here watching, let me know in the comments what you thought. What am I missing? What should I be liking that I'm not liking? Or maybe you think I'm crazy for switching to Sony. Let me know in the comments. And if you don't already, please subscribe to this video and we will see you in the next one.